G'day guys, Rob Herbert from R&M Blades. It's been a bit of a quest of mine, I guess, to show you some processes of how you can pull a deer apart out in the bush. Some pretty fuss-less methods, I guess, so you're limiting the amount of blood and guts that you're getting on yourself. So this is a spiker that I've just shot with a 7 PRC. So he's absolutely dropped on the spot. But we've set him up to set up for success, I guess, if we're going to cut him up in the bush. Set him up so we've got easy access to all the parts that we need to. And I'll show you that when we get into that with the knife work. So my mate Dean's with me and he's going to be doing the actual work, while I do the talking, which I think is a pretty good deal. Anyway guys, let's get on with it and I'll talk to you soon. So. Okay, it's the second video in our bush butchery, I guess. So what Dane's identifying there is where the hips actually sit on the deer, and this is a good spot for us to know that that's where our back straps that we're going to cut out start and finish. So Dane's just going to make a singular cut up the spine. Sometimes some people cut this way, some people cut the other way. It just depends on which way you want to do it. Either way, we want to access that line of hair along the back to open it up to be able to get down onto what we call our back stakes if you're in New Zealand, or back straps for what we call the same piece of meat here in Australia. So we've cut down pretty much down to where our spines are, and we're just pulling that skin back. As you can see, some people, believe it or not, have been leaving the back straps in the bush because they actually don't know how to actually deal with it. But we're going to show you how we get them out. So what Dean's got going on there is actually where the back strap on the bottom side of the back strap sits, and where we make our cuts so we don't end up in the gut bag. Dean's just going to open it up a bit more. And where Dean's got his left hand, where he had his left hand, is where the top of the shoulder sits. So he's just really opening that up so that he can have a bit of a look, and there's the exit. So we won't play around too much with that. Alright, so taking the back straps out, Dean's just cutting. You can see that there's all this white sort of material sitting on top of the meat, and he's just made a little hole in there to get a grab or a handle so that he can actually pull this shoulder away fairly easily. And it might be a bit untidy in there. That 7 PRC really does do some damage, which is also something to consider if you're taking a shot on an animal, is to know how your ammunition functions and what you want to actually keep and what you don't want to keep. So Dean's got the back of the back strap here, and this is just our way of doing it, I guess. So he's identifying where to make his cut there. We've all got to start and finish them somewhere, and you'll see why we do it, how we do it, in a minute. And he's just going to change his knife over to his HFK, I think. Horses for courses on your knife selection, long blades, short blades, different people like them for different reasons. So you can see there, that is the spine. If you can just show the spine there, Dane, just that's the spine he's got his thumb on, and the back strap sits just either side of that, and you'll see when we expose this down to the ribs, just taking it out. And this is probably showing the most respect you can to an animal that you've hunted and harvested for the table, is knowing how to take the meat from the animal and get it home and get the best out of it that you can. So he's just punching another little hole in there so he can once again get his finger in there and get a good hold. Rolling the knife down the ribs, so underneath the spine there, and we'll expose the ribs in a minute, are the ribs. So you see the gut sitting right there under the ribs. We just want to be a little bit careful there, but just take your time. We don't need to be absolutely flogging yourselves or whatever. The knives are sharp, and you just want to make sure you're getting the best you can out of it. So he's taking that back strap up nice and long, and that sits up into where the neck meat is, and there is a beautiful long piece of back strap. We're going to put that in a tree, just hang it so it gets to cool down and get as much temperature out of that meat as we possibly can. But what I will show you here is where the knife's sitting. We're sitting on top of the ribs. So these are the ribs through here. So this is the spine up here, and the ribs come across there and up there. And that back strap sits in that channel. So what we're going to do is do exactly the same to the other side. And then come back to you and show you what the next step is that we do. Alright guys, so we're just going to do the other side here, and you can see Dean's got a real good hold of that skin. It's pulling it tight so that he can pull it away from his knife while he's doing the blade work. So you can imagine doing this late in the afternoon, and then you've got to start wearing a head torch. You want to make sure that you go home with as many fingers as you're left with. So keeping yourself nice and safe and your knife work nice and clean will make sure that you do the best job possible in the scenario. The other thing I just wanted to point out is that Sambar hair is actually quite bristly, and it's quite, you can see it sitting on top of the back strap there. What I like to do is, when I've got back to camp, is go over my meat and pull as much of that off as I possibly can, because when it goes cold, it will actually stick on it like you wouldn't believe. And the last thing you want to do is put a bit of meat and Sambar hair into some sausage mix or on the table. So you can see Dean's opened that out quite nicely there, and he's gone back and felt where that hip is, and he's using his HFK because for Dean, he feels like that longer, thinner blade is much more advantageous for any of this sort of butchery work. Which, like I said before, horses for courses. You can do the same thing with one knife. You can skin, you can gut, you can bone with one knife. You just have to be a bit more careful. But Dean's well and truly experienced with what he wants to do. And away we go. So you can see that he's made that same finger hole in that fibrous material which sits just above the back strap. It gives him a really good hold and enables him to be able to get this side out quite easily. It's much easier than you're trying to hang on to it and pull it and other bits and pieces. It just works really well. He's cutting it up nice and deep again like the other side, and we've got that second backy out and he's good to go. So there's a bit of shoulder damage up the front there. That's the entry side. Doing the best that you can to take off as much as you can is all that you can be asked of. So, and that's asked of. So we've now got the animal set up. We're in the shade as well, which is something else to consider, so you're not out in the full sun if you can. And we're now going to move on to our next step. I'll just get these back straps though sorted out, hung up, and we'll come back to you with that. Okay, what we've got taken out here is the commonly called the back strap. What sits up in here is called the eye fillet. It's quite a soft piece of meat, and it sits along there but on the spine. And normally to access that you'd have to either completely gut the animal to be able to get at it, but what we would like to show you is a way that we get into it so that you can actually access that piece of meat. So we're just making a small little tear or cut, I guess, being very careful. You see Dean's left hand is pushing down on the gut bag, so we don't want to pierce that at all. If you do, that's not a pleasant experience for anyone. And before you go back in there, Dean, I'll just get in nice and close. That piece of meat that he's grabbed is what we're talking about. That's the eye fillet. It's very soft, it'll tear easily, and you really need to take a little bit of care, but you can get it out this way. So just accessing it, it comes back to, sits back in here. So we know that's where the hips are. It sort of pulls up a bit short there. And just being very careful, like we said, because that is the gut bag that you can see. And we're just going up against the spine. So the knife is pretty much always going in and up, not stabbing in there and going down. It can help you sometimes to do this if you have the animal either in this position. We've got it facing uphill a little bit here because we're in quite steep country, but you can also use gravity to help move that gut bag around a little bit, but just be careful, that's all we're saying. And these little fillets are well worth taking it out. They're very soft, very delicate, and with a flash fry in a pan, they are bloody unreal. Very, very good. All right, well, we'll get at it and get the other one out and come back to you then. Okay, so here comes probably the part that most people balk at, is that we don't have to, but what we're going to show you how we do it is we're going to actually cut around the anal gland and release the last part of the intestine, I guess, that feeds that anal gland where the pellets come out. And you'll see why we do that in half a second. It may be a bit gross for some people, but it's something that you can do with gloves or without gloves if you're a little bit, you know, whiffish about it. But what we've got going on here is the longer blade, the HFK, is sort of got in there and cut around it properly. You really have to do that to release it. Otherwise, you just bouncing around off the skin. So let's give Dean a bit of a hand here. You good?
Yeah, just stop it, I reckon.
Okay, another video to the bush butchery. So we've set him up, we've done the work around the anal gland. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you how we take the hips off together, which means that you can preserve the actual rump, which is only small on deer, but it's a bloody good roast and nice and tasty. I guess there's another way you can do this, is put the deer on its back like you can. And traditionally, a lot of people make a cut down through here. And they end up following what's called the H bone, which is in that last sort of part there. But at the same time, they end up nicking a very big artery in there when you pop the ball joint. And you get a lot of bleed back from the blood that's in the animal. It'll bleed back into your meat and bleach your meat, and it's not always the best. And a lot of people cut them very shallow, so they're actually missing the rump, which we think is a pretty good spot. So Dane, away you go. So he's just cutting through the pizzle there. It's going to remove all of the bits that are basically going to be in his way. I'm just trying to be as clean as I can about it. So it's a pretty important thing. We just get rid of that, and he's going to open and expose the gut where it is here. So this is a stag, or a little spiker really, that's been wallowing, and you can see that mud that's on his back leg there and on the cape. You can already see the dirt and muck that comes from their cape. It's really quite a dirty thing, and what we want to try and do is minimise the amount of contamination or cross-contamination between what's on a cape and what you're taking home to eat. So he's just made entry into the gut here, and he's going to pull that pretty much out of the way in a second. I'll just get a better camera view around here. Yep, and off we go. And Dean's just making a bit of a cut there. He's using his fingers as a depth gauge, so to speak, so that he can push the gut down and at the same time get in there so that he can open it up so we can get this gut out. So I'll pause it here and get on to the next stage. So we've got the animal on its side, and you can see that caul fat, which is something that you can take and wrap around a roast and cook it wrapped in that actual caul fat. It's a nice webbing, I guess you can call it, and it actually is, it might sound a bit gross, but it's actually quite a decent thing. So it's something that it's a choice, but it's also another part of the animal that you can utilise, and you know, there's quite a few fellas that I know that use it, and it's quite a good part. So by doing that anal cut, you can see that Dean's now able to release that last part of the tract and move this off to one side. As you see why, we're going to be taking these legs off as a complete part in half a second. So Dean's identified where the hip is here again, and we're going to make a cut through whole way around there and down to where the hip is. So that's the original cut. You can see that bit of skin is getting away there, that he made when he took the back straps out. And it's quite easily exposed both the spine here, which you'll see why that's important in a minute, and we've got the deer completely cleaned through there, ready to go onto the next cut. Okay, so we've used gravity. We've just pulled him uphill a little bit just to be able to get that gut to roll forwards for us. Jane's identified where the hip is and cut through that last remaining piece of skin. And now we're going to move on to sectioning him out. We just pulled his legs back. I'm just trying to hang onto a leg here and do the same thing. And finding a joint there. You can see the amount of blood that comes out of there. That's the sort of blood that you would have having bleed back into the animal itself. So Dane's through a section here in the spine, and you can just see that nice, which you pull up there, Dane. I know you're right in the middle of cutting. We've just cut through. It's not actually cutting through the bone; it's through the joint, and it's quite a clean cut. And he's not forcing the knife or leaving it left or right. You'll find it, and you'll see that it'll cut quite easily. And just following that around. Now we have the back legs separated from the body. So what we'll do is we'll just get this cleaned up for half a second, and I'll come back to you all. Okay, so the next video we're showing you is how we actually pull these hips apart out in the bush. Just making a simple cut through that midline. And as I said before, you can see that bleed out happen from the dorsal aorta, which we've preserved now, the legs from having all of that blood bleaching. So you can see he's down on the actual bone itself there, and now he's going to use his silky saw, which is just a little pocket boy. This has done hundreds of deer, and probably needs a new saw put in it. And literally just cut through the hip bone, so it's split like that. And we'll do the same through the rest of it. I just got to give Dean a bit of a hand here at this point in time, and we'll come back to you when we've got this actually cut open. Okay, so we've just split the top of that bone, and we're going down through the last part of the spine, I guess. And this poor little saw has done literally hundreds of deer and been used as a camp saw to cut firewood and all sorts of bits and pieces. But now we can actually go back to the knife and get through the last part that connects them. And we've now got two beautifully separated legs that we're going to hang up in a tree, and we're going to bone out and show you all the different little cuts and ways that you can actually get this pulled apart. Most importantly, what we're doing is making sure that we're getting the best table fare that we possibly can. And when we show you to bone it out, even if you can't bone it out properly, but you can cut the bone off or the meat off the bone, it'll lighten your load, particularly when you're back like we are out in the scrub, and we need to be able to carry this out in meat bags in our packs and that sort of thing. Anyway, we'll get on with getting it set up, and then I'll get back to you then. Okay, so what we've done is we've sort of set ourselves up for success once again and skinned it out a little bit on the ground. And we can see that hole that we've got in the back of the tendon here. That is where you're going to actually connect it to your meat hook or paracord or whatever if you're hanging it in a tree. Now, some people, when they don't know, they might actually cut through that tendon there and think that they're doing the right thing. You literally have nothing for the animal or the leg to be able to hang on anything. So creating that nice little socket in there, that hole, is what we want to be able to do before we get it up onto our device that we're going to hang it on. Anyway, that's just another little tidbit that we'll sort of missed on the last ones, but it's good to throw. Alright, so okay, so what we've done is we've taken out of our kill kit the meat hook, a little carabiner and some paracord, and slung it around the branch there, so we can actually do this up off the ground, which gives you the back a bit of a break, and it also gives you the advantage of gravity, so you can pull you know, your meat cuts off. And we're going to skin this out and show you how we do that. So Dane's going to jump in there like the professional that he is and get into this. and pull it apart. And skinning deer when they're fresh, so to speak, is so much easier than skinning them after they've set. The skin will really stick on there. And one thing that I'm going to do once I get back to my home is I'm going to wet age all this meat, and it actually comes out absolutely fantastic. So this is once again just not the absolute way to do it, but it is a way that we have both found to be pretty efficient and a good way to do it. At this stage, if you don't want to wet age your stuff, you could literally stick that leg in your backpack and off you go. Start transporting your meat by the old GP Express boots, leg power, up over the hill and down through the gully and all the way back around into camp. And it would be nothing wrong with you doing that, or just throwing a meat bag over the whole thing and doing less with it than what we're doing now, and deal with it later if you have a cool room or something similar. But as you can see, this skin's come off pretty quick and pretty easy, and it's weight that we don't need to put in our backpack or try and carry as we get out of the bush. So you just get this last bit off. Does a good job, Dean. I sweat all day watching him work. It's fantastic. Once again, the Sambar hair itself is it's like bristly, and if you can get as much of that Sambar hair off the animal when you're processing it and not getting it on the meat, the better. The other thing that this does is it makes sure that your meat is staying off the ground and you're not getting it absolutely caked or covered in leaves and sticks and dirt and other bits and pieces. And if you have shot your animal near a wallow or a preach, try not to butcher the animal in that wallow or preach or scrape, not because you're going to tell the rest of the deer that you've been around, but what it will do is it'll stop all of that material going onto the meat. Alright, so Dane, if you just want to reel off the different major cuts that are on here, and then we'll just get into pulling it down and getting it out. Off you go.
Yeah, so that's the H-bone we've cut through there. Pretty much that's your rump section through the bottom there. Top side is this muscle that runs on the bottom side, basically the inside of the leg, and you've got your round at the front, and then your silver side is these two muscles that run down this side here. That's the silver side, and then you've got your shank up the top. Basically that's it.
So how are you going to attack this first?
I'll just take the H-bone out first, and then we'll get that out. Then we'll take the rump off, then we'll take the round out, and we'll take the top side, then we'll take the silver side.
Beautiful. Alright, well we'll get to pulling this out and then we'll come back to you when the H-bone's out. Oakley dokley, so we're just going to pull this H-bone out. They call it the H-bone because it looks like the H-bone when it's got no meat, or H when it's got no meat on it, when it's a complete bone. So Dane's just made the little cut there using what the meat hook is, like it's a hanging hook, but it's getting used as a meat hook, so that he can once again use that gravity and a little bit of pull down and just cut in there. So even if you're not confident with your knife cuts and you make couple of little mistakes, it doesn't actually matter. The more you do, the better you get, and the better you get, the more confident you are. It's just having a crack, I guess, which is important. And you can see Dane's just releasing that H-bone around the ball joint there. You can see that ball joint sitting in there, and at the same time is preserving that rump, which is sitting on the outside of that H-bone. So you just got around the back side of it there. Just pull that out there, the bone. I reckon crows can smell. They can't see us, but they're already onto us. And we're just pulling that down nice right there. And the H-bone is out. Alright, I'll just pause this for a second and then we'll move on to the next one. So what Dean's showing you there is the rump, which is sitting underneath that ball joint, and that is a really good cut, and just cutting straight across the line there. And like I said, if you make a few mistakes or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's not like you've paid $4 million for this Wagyu beef. This is something you need to learn. Just get a bit confident cutting through. And once again, you can see the size of that rump. It's a spiky rump. It's enough to be able to definitely wrap up into a roast and serve it up. I'm just going to get a game bag for Dean, and we'll get this moving along. Okay, so what Dean's going to take out now is the round. You can see that line that certainly goes down between where the ball joint and the knuckle on the knee is, and then just cut back up from, as if there was a imaginary line from the ball joint to the kneecap, and the same again down through the side there. And you can just thumb that muscle through there. You can see how it separates. And then off the front of the kneecap, I'm just making a cut at the very top of it. You can see it exposes it there, like so. Just going to put his meat hook in there, and we're going to pull that down and cut it away. You can see that it's just exposed that nicely. Putting the knife in there, and you'll see it just falls away beautifully. And there is your next cut off. The game bag's behind you, mate. I'll just grab that, and I'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, so we've taken the round and the rump off, and I'm going to take the top side off, which is like what Dean was saying. It's actually the inside muscle. And you can see he's got his thumb there between that colour change. Just making a nice little cut across the top of the shank, where the back of the shank sits, so he can access that little muscle group there. Following the knife around. And the thing here, but you can just show where that silver side is sort of at the front there. That's the silver side there. You can see that meat's going sort of up and down long ways, or vertically. And we're just following that shank around and that kneecap and separating these guys. Beautiful. And getting back down onto that bone and down onto the knuckle joint, and there's our next beautiful chunk of meat ready for bagging up and putting in the pack. Alright, I'll get back to you in half a sec. Okay, so the two cuts to the left might come around this side. There's a silver side, which Dean can pull off pretty quick now. It's pretty much the only big muscle group that's left on the main leg bone. And if you had this flat on a table, you'd still be able to pull it apart pretty easily, but just having that gravity really helps be able to get it off nice and easily. And once again, we're just referencing back down to the knuckle bone, the ball joint, and back to the knee on most of the cuts. And this is our silver side. This is what we pickle, and you'll buy it as beef silver side. It's exactly the same thing. You can see these serrations through the meat here, which looks a bit different to the other meat. That's a good way of identifying it as well. Okay, so the last piece that's on here is commonly known as the shank. The shank is excellent slow roasted, or put in a pressure cooker is even better. Pressure cookers do really help with these tougher cuts, I guess. And just bone it out as best as you can. Once again, just following the natural seams and the inside of that shin bone. The other thing you could do is take it out whole and put it through the bandsaw and use it as that busso, which is just the shin beef or shin cuts, and then you can once again slow roast, slow cook, and Bob's your uncle, or Jeb's a millionaire, as we say. So that's the big chunk of shank meat coming off there. once again, like we said, you can either leave it on the actual bone or do what we're doing and take it off. It's also a great sausage or mince adding if you need more meat to be able to throw into your mincing pile or whatever it may be. So, and there's our shin, and there is our completely boned out back leg. Now that took a little bit of time because we're filming it, but really it takes no time at all, and you'll be much happier when you're back at camp and you don't have to deal with meat that's still on bones and skin and all those sort of bits and pieces. Anyway, people, we'll get on with it and we'll get everything else done. I hope that this educates some people and helps them, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.